Hello, good afternoon. This is Jamie of Stillmeyer Games, and today I'm coming to you at least partially as just Jamie, Crowdfunder creator Jamie, not only Stillmeyer Games, because a couple years ago I wrote a book on crowdfunding called A Crowdfunder's Strategy Guide, and I've started a little book club about it. I still write a lot about crowdfunding and entrepreneurship on the Stillmeyer Games blog, including a post today largely about fulfillment and shipping and freight shipping. And so today and in the subsequent weeks that follow, I'm going to join you live here to talk about one chapter in this book, week by week, maybe every other week. And we'll just talk about the current state of some of the topics I talk about in this book, with some the current state, some current examples, things like that. Because the book now is 7 years old, which means I wrote it around 8 or 9 years ago. So some things might need a little bit of updating. You don't need to own the book to participate in this book club. There is a link in the description here if you want to get further notifications when I discuss future chapters. But yeah, let's jump right in. The first chapter, and I have the large print edition of the book for reasons involving me accidentally ordering the large print version, but it's actually nice to show up on screen. This first chapter is called You Don't Need to Launch Today. This is an article that I still refer to quite a few times whenever someone contacts me in regards to it. I see some comments here. Cynthia is joining us to say that she loved this book, very helpful for our Kickstarter campaigns. And Elena says, woo, book club. Yeah, book club. So basically, this chapter, You Don't Need to Launch Today, comes from a blog post that I think of whenever someone reaches out to me and says, I'm excited to launch my Kickstarter campaign. I just discovered your blog, and I look forward to reading all this stuff and adjusting some things during the campaign. I hear things like that more often than I'd love to hear from crowdfunders, because it probably means not that my blog is necessary reading for a Kickstarter campaign. I don't mean that at all. But the idea that you would learn that there's a new source of information where you can learn a lot about how to launch a successful campaign, and you're still going to launch the campaign anyway right away instead of kind of learning from all that content, I think is a little bit of a red flag, and it might mean that you haven't done certain things that you need to think about before you launch your campaign. And one of the first things I wanted to mention in today's book club, and I'm just going to talk, but I will watch the comments and see your questions, and please join the discussion. Let me know what you're thinking as I'm talking about this. One of the big examples I use in this chapter is a campaign called The Coolest Cooler. This was a campaign that originally launched in the winter of a year. So this is about like a cooler, the type of cooler you take to take camping to the beach, take on a barbecue. And the campaign launched in the winter, which is the one time of the year where you don't really think as much about cooling things in a cooler. And so the campaign didn't do all that well, and so they relaunched. They tried again in the summer when people were actively thinking about cooling things, and the campaign did incredibly well. I think this was back in like 2013. 2013, yeah. It raised what? Like an incredible amount of money. $13 million. Raised $13 million. I think that's more than any game-related Kickstarter campaign has ever raised. $13 million. So pretty neat story. You can read the story in the book if you want. However, the modern update of this is, and I think that the lesson here is still the seasonal timing can have a small impact for some campaigns. Most campaigns, I don't think it has that big of an impact. But if you have a product that consumers are actively thinking of, what their felt need is right now, where they're thinking, I want something cold, I want to make something cold right now, they're not going to be thinking about that in the winter, but in the summer, they probably are going to be thinking about it, and that's a good time to launch it. But the other update, a related update about the Coolest Cooler is, despite kind of waiting until a better time to relaunch the campaign, the campaign did so well in terms of the amount of money it raised, the amount of coolers they sold. There have been like a host of problems that have emerged during the actual creation process of this cooler. So it's an interesting success story to feature in this book, because in the end, in hindsight, after delivery, I don't know if many people who backed this campaign would consider it as much of a success story as the book kind of makes it out to be. Roberto joins in here and says, and George is here too. Roberto says he was at PAX recently. Someone talked about launching their game while at PAX and how they would never do that again. I immediately thought of this first chapter. And Chad just joined us as well. Roberto, I think that's a wonderful point. Yeah, the not just like the seasonal timing or being prepared to launch a campaign, but launching a campaign when you yourself are not available to be fully present to it is something that I still like. It is just as relevant now as I think it was back then. Like if you're not able to take a day off work at least to launch the campaign, or have free time during the initial launch process of the campaign, the initial, and really the entire campaign. That's a tricky thing. I think I mentioned that later in the chapter under, let's see, where did I mention that? Yeah, I think there's somewhere in here that I mentioned the idea of just being present that day. Yeah, clear your schedule for launch day. It says clear your schedule for launch day so that you can spend all day sending personal invitations to share your dream with friends and family and respond to individual backers as they pledge. So in essence, I still agree with this advice. Like clearing your day for launch day, I think is a big deal. And if you're at a convention, you're not able to do that. I don't know if I still agree. So one thing that I did on the original Viticulture Kickstarter campaign is I sent individual notes to everyone I knew to try to bring them to the campaign page. I wasn't asking them to necessarily support it, but just I was giving them kind of a fun reason to see this thing that I was really excited about. And that was great, I think, for a first-time creator to engage their audience. My audience was friends and family at that point for the most part. But we'll talk about, I think in a future chapter, I'll talk a little bit more about letting the crowd know about your campaign before you actually launch so that you're not just relying on friends and family, and hopefully not really relying on friends and family all that much at all. Molly says she's been working on her game every Sunday morning, and this book club is going to help me keep me on track. That's awesome, Molly, and I'm glad to hear that you're working on a game too. That's exciting. George says, actually, I've read only the first 2 chapters of the book. The cooler story is a pretty neat example. Yeah, good. That's good, George. You're not getting ahead of yourself yet. Just follow along chapter by chapter. So there's a section in this chapter called When You Control Time, There's No Such Thing as Last Minute. And I think this is a really big thing. So I still see... So I talked about earlier how one instance of this chapter being relevant, I think, are creators who are not prepared and they're discovering all these resources. So they thought they were ready to launch a campaign and they discover all these amazing resources kind of at the last minute that people are recommending to them, and they decide to launch anyway. This chapter is saying you don't need to do that. You could launch whenever you want. But the other part of this, I think there are a lot of creators now that know about all these resources that are out there. But in their head, and I'm including myself in this, in their head, they've decided and they've told people that the launch date is this date. And they kind of get fixated, and I get fixated on that specific date. Like, that's the date. That's the date I've been telling people that we're going to do this. And when you go back on this, I think, and if you ever need to change that date, it feels like, oh, I'm introducing uncertainty now in terms of there could be a delay here. People might perceive this as not successful, and they might not actually back it when I finally launch. But in fact, and this even happened really recently, where I was talking to someone who launched a campaign, and they'd already launched the campaign, and we were talking about the campaign and what was going well, and largely it was going very well. This is a campaign that raised nearly $500,000 fairly recently. And the creator said, yeah, at the last minute, I realized that some of the review copies weren't going to arrive on time, but I already told everyone I was going to launch today. And the campaign was doing well, so I didn't kind of point out the lesson that I'll point out to you from that. But if review copies haven't already arrived at reviewers, and you need to add a little bit of time to give those reviewers time to play the game, I think that can really lead to a higher chance of success than launching today anyway. So why not wait? Even though that's an unknown thing that came up kind of at the last minute, why not still wait a few days or for a few weeks even until those reviewers have the chance to play the game, to share it with their audiences, so you can put those reviews on the project page. Like, there's nothing forcing you to launch today or to launch tomorrow. It's entirely in your hands. And I'll jump over the comments real quick, then I'll come back to this. Leia says, definitely best not to rely on friends. Not all your friends who are as passionate as you about your project, which is okay, and it shows once you start asking for money. I totally agree with that, Leia. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, it's wonderful to have a few supportive family members and friends, but to really entirely count on them to give you money, that isn't their responsibility. It isn't your friend or family's responsibility to give you money. I mean, that's often outside of the bounds of friends and family. I think it's more on us as the creators to create something so awesome and to let enough people know about it who are also really excited about it that they want to support the project, that they want to back the project, not out of any sense of obligation. Suzanne says, is it difficult to change the launch date on Kickstarter? I haven't used Kickstarter in a long time. That's one caveat I should mention when I talk about this book. I now use a different pre-order system, but it is, as far as I know, it is incredibly easy to do that. Like you're not telling Kickstarter you're launching on this date. You are just clicking launch when you're ready to go live. And so one thing you could do on Kickstarter is submit your project, have it accepted by Kickstarter, and then change it as much as you want for weeks or months after that. Like there's really no set time to launch it. You decide when you're ready to click that launch button. So one thing related to all this is a big development that came after the book. So this didn't exist during the book. Now you see so many projects have launch preview pages. This is on Kickstarter and on GameFound, probably on other platforms too. And this is a page that is very simple. It's not the full project page, but it's a place where you can send people this link, and it shows maybe an image related to the project, a little bit of information, like a sentence or two, and a place where they can click notify me upon launch. And Kickstarter even wisely shows the number of people that have clicked that, both to people who are coming to the preview page for the first time and to the creators. This page is incredibly invaluable. It's incredibly helpful because you now, and it gives you a lot more control over when you actually launch, right? So say you've been telling people, I'm going to launch at the end of May, and you have this preview page up and running. If you decide to change that date, it doesn't really matter. Many of those people are not like waiting for you to launch on that date in May. They're waiting for you to launch, period, whenever you decide to launch. And they're going to get a notification from Kickstarter because they clicked on that notify me upon launch button. So I think it's incredibly important now to set up that preview page. And in doing so, it gives you a ton of flexibility regarding the timing of when you actually launch, especially due to all the things that can pop up at the last minute. Andrew says, have you experienced a close person to you, a girlfriend, gamer friend, etc., that wasn't excited about a project that you actually believed would be a hit? That's an interesting question, Andrew. And Andrew, just to clarify, are you talking about one of my projects or one of my products, or just a product in general? I'll guess that you're talking about something that I'm creating. That's an interesting question. Probably, yeah. I can't think of an example offhand, but like yesterday we announced Wingspan themed puzzles. My girlfriend was involved in that process. She was very excited about those puzzles. But I'm sure there are plenty of people. In fact, I know from the sales that there are lots of people who are not excited about the puzzles, and that's okay. I guess, Andrew, it could be, I think what you're alluding to a little bit is that the people around you, directly around you in your life, might not be excited about the same things that you're excited about. They might be excited that you are excited about it, but they may not be excited about your game or your project or whatever you're creating. And I think that's okay. I think that's really okay. I think that's the key. The key there is to go out and find if there is an audience for it, to talk about it openly in whatever community is related to your product or project. And see if people there who don't know you, who aren't biased and already kind of knowing who you are and wanting to be excited about whatever you're excited about, see if they are excited about that thing. George says, you have well calculated the launch dates of for viticulture and later on for Euphoria, and you took the time to prepare all the prerequisites with patience. You described at some point how stressed you were during that time, but you managed all that internally and remained focused for the period being. Yeah, that's getting a little bit ahead to the next chapter, I think, George. But there is, yeah, I think about timing a lot in advance. And even now, when I think about timing for Stonemaier Games, I think about spreading things out, basically. Like, we don't release many products a year, but if we had a few products that were pretty much ready on the same day, I wouldn't want to launch one of them on a Tuesday and the next day. I want to spread them out even by months if I can. So I think about timing in that way now. But yeah, I do try to be calculated about that. But now I use, similar to the Kickstarter's preview page, I am gathering emails in advance, which is just another way to do it. So I gather people's emails in advance if they're interested in something that we are going to be talking about in the future. Sometimes I'll give an exact date. Sometimes I'll give a more vague date if there's more uncertainty involved there as to when we'll launch. And sometimes, even related to that, I've seen what we've done and some other creators have done is we've said for every person who signs up for a pre-launch notification will do something special. Either we'll do something special for everyone who buys the product, or we'll do something special for a nonprofit or charity, like donate $1 for every person who signs up. I've seen creators do both. Sometimes they combine both of them too. Molly says, if you are almost ready to launch and another game is announced that happens to be similar to yours, is that a good reason to delay? I think that's a great reason to delay, Molly. Especially if it's very, very similar, because then people might end up choosing between those two products. I mentioned that, I think, in the book somewhere, or maybe this came after the book, where there was a project that launched. It was a fairly similar project to one that I was launching, and it launched on the same day. And I think if they had waited a little bit longer, their project would have done better. It did okay, but it kind of struggled to reach their funding goal, while our project happened to be doing well. I think that could have gone either way. It could have hurt either of us in the end, because the projects were so similar. So I think that's a pretty good reason to delay, or at least not launch on the exact same day or the exact same week, because then people in their heads are going to be thinking, which game about cats am I going to back this week? There are two great games that look really interesting about cats, but I'm only in the mood for one cat game right now, or I already backed this one cat game. Why would I back that other cat game? Yeah. The next part of the chapter gets into this pre-launch checklist. The thing I might change about the book here a little bit is that this isn't a checklist to do like the day of your launch. What this is this is a list of things where if you haven't done these things, then you probably shouldn't even be thinking about launching yet. There are things like starting a blog, so creating a hub for your content, or a website. It doesn't have to be a blog. Hunt down and subscribe to at least 20 blogs related to your project. So the essence of that is like being really aware of what is happening in the space of whatever the category of your project is, or your product is. I'll skip a few of these, but one is back 10 to 20 crowdfunding projects. I still sometimes hear creators who haven't backed any Kickstarter projects before, and yet they're launching their own Kickstarter campaign. I think there's so much you can learn from closely following other crowdfunding campaigns and seeing what works, what doesn't work, what's exciting, what's frustrating. So key to do that, I think, even now. I'll skip forward a little bit. Create a budget. Yeah, if you haven't created a detailed budget for your campaign, today is not the day to launch for that yet. You got to create that budget before you launch. Here's another key one. Pay a professional artist and graphic designer to create some really attractive, eye-catching art to show off on your project page. So more and more, I think one of the big changes that's happened between now and when the book came out is projects look more and more professional. There is a heavier upfront investment in projects to make that project page look really beautiful, to have really beautiful examples of art and graphic design on your project page. But I still think even now that you don't need to have finished all of your art and graphic design. Frank just chimed in to say, I know which cat game they should choose. Frank makes a wonderful cat game called The Isle of Cats. Good point, Frank. Good point. But the idea here is I still see some campaigns that are getting ready to launch where the art and graphic design, even just for a few sample images, doesn't really look great. And I struggled with that for a long time. Like, how do you know if the art and graphic design doesn't look good, if it isn't ready yet? We all kind of, when we hire an artist to do a good job, we have, what is it called, like rose tinted glasses, where like we start to see this art. We want the art to look good so badly that we don't always see that maybe it isn't as good as we'd hoped. This has even happened to us at Still Meyer Games. It certainly happened to me, even after working on these games for 10 years. And so I wrote a blog post maybe a year or so ago about how to figure out if your art actually is good enough. And this is one of the many reasons, and this kind of stretches through all these examples here, is that if you are preparing a product or a game, I think it's super helpful to share information about it openly on related forums online and in person, but a lot online, just to share it. Share your excitement for it. Ask for feedback on an ongoing basis. Like, don't wait until the last minute to ask for feedback. And ask for feedback about the art. See if you are missing something about the art that people are willing to tell you, whether it's the main image, the graphics, the word mark that you're using. So I think it's really helpful to get unbiased opinions about that as early as possible, and sharing your project and getting feedback about that. That's a huge thing even today. I actually mentioned here, so there used to be a way to share a preview page of the project, and there still is on Kickstarter, where you can share privately. You can share the full page with someone to help them get feedback about the project page. I still think that's key, like getting kind of that behind the scenes information about your project page before you launch from people who want to give you detailed feedback. I missed a few comments here, so let's see. Elena says, movie releases are similar. Pixar canceled a Reptile movie because of Rango. Yeah, that can happen at time. Big movie studios can change the schedule sometimes even cancel movies like that. I've heard more about them changing schedules. Like recently, I think James Cameron announced when he wanted to release the new Avatar movie, Avatar 2. And there was another big movie that decided to move out of the way of that to make room for it. They didn't want to launch on the same day, even these giant movie studios. Peter says, Castaways probably wishes it was launched further apart from Robinson Crusoe. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Robinson Crusoe is still a very successful game today. I haven't heard many people talking about Castaways in a long time. Andrew says, art is so important to looking like a pro, even if you're not. Totally agree, Chad. I might have said Andrew said that. Chad said that. Totally agree. Yeah, having a really clean art, really great art, and really clean graphic design can make a project page look really, really professional, even if you don't have the funding to afford a lot of it at this point. Just to have a little bit of that on the project page can really, really help. George says, have you prepared and managed the launch Kickstarter? Oh, did I prepare and manage the launch Kickstarter page for Viticulture myself? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for all of our Kickstarter campaigns, I was the one puzzling over those project pages for a long time. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, George, because one thing I would do with these project pages that I recommend to any creator is that if you like right now, maybe after this book club, if you are planning for a Kickstarter campaign anytime in the next, I would say 6 to 8 months, even way out in the future, go ahead and start your project page on Kickstarter. Go to Kickstarter or GameFound, wherever you want to start it. And start the page. Just start working on it. Start tinkering with it. Start moving things around. Start writing text. Start throwing down temporary images on there. I would tinker with my project page for months leading up to the launch, and it really helped me get a good sense of how to market this page, how to talk about it in a marketing sense, how to structure what's the most important to people, both in terms of how I'm thinking about it and the feedback that I was getting from that project page. And it can feel really, this is one of the things I miss about Kickstarter. It can feel really good and exciting to just start that project page. It makes it feel more real that you're actually working towards something if you start working on that project page now. And there's no deadline. You can start working on it now, even if you have no even semblance of idea of when you are actually going to launch. Andrew says, finding an artistic theme for my music-related game is tough. Whimsical, realistic, 80s, 90s color palette. Much kudos to finding the right art to fit one's game. Yeah, well, we'll jump around. I keep almost saying that, let's talk about art later, but yeah, we can talk a little bit about art now, about finding the right artist. And one thing that I think is wonderful in this day and age, if you are looking for art for a board game in particular, as I imagine many of you are here to discuss, I love looking at the art on Board Game Geek, like just art for different games. And on my shelf, I'll just look at my shelf and find artists that I like. And I reach out to those artists all the time. I reach out to artists and say, hey, I really like your art on this game. And sometimes it'll just be that. I'll just send them a comment publicly or privately and say, I really love what you did on this game. That happened with Everdell, actually. Years ago, I love the Everdell art so much, the Everdell box art, that I reached out to Andrew Bosley and just said, I love what you did here. I think this was really awesome. I would love to work with you someday. I don't have anything in mind at this point, but I hope for the opportunity to work with you someday. And later on, when I contacted Andrew, he kind of maybe had that seed planted in his head, and he had tried out a few of our games at that point, and he said yes to work on Tapestry, and even more recently on Viticulture World. So yeah, thinking about that art, thinking about finding the right style, that art direction, and then start putting some potential artists out there, some feelers out there, I think can be a lot of fun, really. Elena says, I like Kickstarter projects that are fun to be a part of and checking the update page every hour. Yeah, that is a lot of fun when Kickstarter pages have that level of engagement. Frank says, these days I have a personal requirement that my project page must be finished before I announce my launch date. Ooh, that's interesting, Frank. I like that. Having that project page finished before you announce the launch date. He says, of course, minor changes may happen, but it has to be done as it always takes longer than you expect and adds too much pressure otherwise. Oh, totally. Yeah. If you work backwards, if you say this is the date and and I'm working backwards based on that date rather than saying I'm starting today and when it's finished, I will start announcing actual dates. That's a totally different mentality there, and I like your approach there a lot, Frank. That's great advice. Oh, Chad had a nice tip here. ArtStation.com has a board game and card game tab so you can search great artists within that field. That's really cool. So the last part of the chapter talks about basically bad reasons to launch today anyway. Let me read through these real quick, and I'll talk about some notes that I made. So here's one quote. I already told everyone that it's going to launch today. So I've talked about that earlier. Like, so what? You've told everyone it's going to launch today. Like, if they care about what you're making, they're still going to be here tomorrow or next week or the next week. And if they were that fickle, and there might be some people that really are that fickle, and that's okay. Some of those friends that Leia mentioned earlier, sometimes friends can be like really, they can sound really excited about something, but when it comes to actually giving you money for something, they may not actually follow through, and that's okay. That's their choice. I have to launch today or I'll run into a bad time of month or the year for a crowdfunding project. And this is one where I kind of try to reassure creators that I don't think there really is a bad time of month. I don't even, generally, I think launches stay away from December because in December, people are doing holiday shopping. They're thinking about buying something they can get right now. So generally, December is not a great month, but every other month of the year is, or any time of the month really, is a pretty good time of month to launch if your project is ready. This is one of the worst ones, unfortunately. I have to launch today because I need the money right away. This is a dangerous one, I think. And it comes partially down to your motivations and your needs for launching a Kickstarter campaign. If you are so reliant on that money that you feel like you need to launch today just to get some of that money, well, you won't get the money until the end of the project anyway. And if you're not successful, you're not going to get any money at all. And most importantly, that could really just put you in a bind to be relying on a campaign for the money to like move forward with your life. I think can really even just almost endanger your campaign. Like I know we all need income to pay the bills and to survive, but to put all that pressure on a project that might not even succeed and for which you need that money to actually make the product and ship the product in many cases. I think that's just a dangerous proposition to continue with, to be that reliant or have your budget be that tight that you can't wait a few more days or a few more weeks to launch. A big red flag there, I think. My project isn't 100% ready, but I'll fix it during the campaign. Definitely heard that. You all have probably heard that as well. Just don't launch today. Don't launch today if that's the case. Wait until it is 100% ready and then do what Frank says. Don't even launch then decide when you're going to launch. And last, I have to launch today or my production schedule is ruined. I say in the book here, I saved this one for last because I did this. I wanted to get Euphoria to backers before Christmas, so I had to finish the project on June 12th, and I had to send it to my manufacturer by June 22nd. I totally did that. I forgot that I did that. I say, here's the deal. No matter how well you planned your project, you simply do not know what awaits you in production and shipping. There's so many variables. And the past version of Jamie that wrote that is absolutely correct. It worked out for Euphoria. It's kind of incredible that we went to production that fast after the campaign ended. But that's I think a dangerous proposition to hinge everything on launching that quickly after or going to production that quickly after you launch. I think is tricky. Can add some difficulties in there. Elena brings up an interesting point. This can deter backers sometimes. In fact, I mentioned this even on today's blog post. One thing that we've seen emerge a lot since these early days of Kickstarter are creators launching campaigns even though they haven't fulfilled their previous campaign or even their previous campaigns. And I think backers, part of this is the responsibility of backers to kind of not back those campaigns. Like wait until the earlier campaign or campaigns are fulfilled and then get excited and back the new thing. But that can be hard sometimes. You have a creator who launches something that looks really cool. You want to back that before they fulfill the other campaign. I see creators do this more and more often. And it's a little bit odd, especially in these uncertain times of the pandemic. Knowing that you haven't fulfilled your previous campaign or multiple campaigns and launching another one anyway. that I think is another great reason, great modern reason not to launch today. If you haven't fulfilled your previous campaign, or especially your previous two campaigns, don't launch another campaign. You're going to lose backer confidence because you haven't fulfilled those other projects, and you I don't know, you're putting just a lot of pressure on yourself, and that's a lot of money to spend that you haven't actually that you need to have that you haven't spent yet. Roberto says shipping is interesting right now. That probably wouldn't be able to be done today. That was for Euphoria. So I think that's what Roberto is referring to. That having that tight of a schedule in mind, like going to production right after we launch, so that we can fulfill in 5 months. Shipping is so uncertain these days that it's really difficult to predict that. Chad says, did you find that you didn't price out expenses as well as you could have after your games were funded? Any surprise expenses afterwards? So for viticulture, I definitely didn't budget as well as I should have. Absolutely. For Euphoria, by then I had a much tighter budget. And for viticulture, I would say the main thing that I didn't price out as well in advance were the stretch goals and the fulfillment and shipping. I kind of thought, I'll figure that out later. I'll kind of average out, like, this will be how much it'll cost, and I'll figure it out later, which is a terrible approach to budgeting. Like, I think it's really, really important now, and I try to do this for all of our products, to have a really... Actually, no, I don't do this quite as much now. Like, we have a little bit more flexibility now to just make something and figure out the price for it later. But yeah, especially back in my Kickstarter days, I would try to be very meticulous about that budgeting all the sunk costs, the manufacturing costs, the potential stretch goals, and then freight shipping and parcel shipping costs as well. George says, theoretically, even the blind playtesting should be done before launching. Oh, totally agree with that. Absolutely. If it's possible. Better off having a well-polished product and start preparing for production before launching while being in the campaign if you want to be successful. He says, I see many Kickstarter campaigns still playtesting the game and tweaking it after the campaign is finished. So my approach to this, and I would say that this hasn't changed a lot since I wrote this book, is I encourage most of what you said there, George. I think it's great to have a game fully playtested going into the campaign, but to leave a little bit of wiggle room, because backers might be really excited to try that game too, and they might have some good feedback that might impact the mechanisms, and it might impact the rule book, even just in terms of clarity and balance, intuition, things like that. And so leaving a little bit of that wiggle room open for the project itself, I think, can be really helpful for creators. I don't know if there are any people who have launched recent campaigns and found that to be invaluable, but feel free to let me know in the comments here. Alana says, is there a formula for a cushion budget? I usually try to cushion, especially with these days with uncertainties with manufacturing costs and freight shipping, I would put a 20% cushion in there in your budget. Yeah. Mark says, what's the topic right now? We're kind of close to wrapping up, talking about some of the terrible reasons that you might try to launch today, even though you're not really ready. And some of the tips that I've added here in my notes is, again, I mentioned this earlier in the live cast, the idea of talking about your project early and often. I didn't really emphasize as much in this chapter as I should have, but I think there's huge value from the day that you have maybe not even the day that you have the first idea, but maybe that early, but start talking about what you're building. Start talking about this passion project that you're working on openly and publicly. I think the great fear is that someone will steal your idea, but no one's going to steal your idea. Like, it's all about execution. You might have a great idea, but if you don't execute on it, it doesn't matter. So share that idea, share how you were executing it, how you're moving forward with it, how you're struggling with it, and what you're succeeding with. Share that art, the graphic design, share those types of things early and often, because that will really, really help you figure out, if anyone else cares about this thing that you're creating. And if they don't, that's okay. You can still proceed and have fun with it yourself, but maybe not lead to a campaign where no one still cares the day that you launch. And B, that there's a level of awareness about it when you do launch. So people have gotten excited over that period of time. They've clicked on that notify me upon launch button, and they're there on day one. We'll talk about that more in a future chapter. I already mentioned the example of the recent project that didn't have the review copies ready in time for the campaign, but they launched anyway, and they succeeded. They did fine, but I think they would have done even better if they had those review copies available. Frank says the biggest surprises for his first project were stolen, lost, and damaged shipments, having to cover them, and people not filling in pledge managers and then reaching out 6 months after fulfillment. Yeah, I'm hoping, that's a great example, Frank. I'm hoping the infrastructure around pledge managers has changed over time to limit the amount that happens. Because I would, even like years after fulfilling a campaign, I would occasionally get a message from someone saying, hey, like I never got my shipment, and I'd go back and look at their data, and they had never completed their backer survey, or they hadn't until that day. And then they still kind of expected me to be holding on to a copy of the game in our warehouse for years to send it to them. I think I eventually moved towards a model where after a certain point in time, I just canceled and refunded the pledges of people who hadn't filled out the fulfillment, the backer survey to prevent that from happening. But I'm guessing that pledge managers do something similar now, but I don't know for sure. I haven't ever used a pledge manager because I always use Kickstarter survey. I think we're getting close to wrapping up the topic of you don't need to launch today. I've loved the comments today. Hopefully this format works okay. Let me know. Like, this is the first attempt at me doing this. My hope is to really bring these topics into the modern light and how strategies have changed over time, how resources have changed over time, and talking about some modern examples. And also how some of these things, even though I don't do Kickstarter anymore, I still launch projects and products that I get excited about that I want to share with a lot of people, and some of the methods that I use to do so. Even very recently, Viticulture World. I use a recent example. Viticulture World, we were hoping to launch, to do the pre-order for this in early May. But due to freight shipping and some other factors, we weren't going to be ready to do that in early May. And so rather than launch the pre-order and not have anything to ship yet for over a month, we decided to change the pre-order date until early June. And even now, I haven't ironed out. I haven't said for sure this is the day that we're going to be launching. Probably June 1st, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, even now, like we've tried to stay flexible until the last minute in terms of those dates, because I found with our current method, what we currently do is we make a product like Viticulture World. We started production on this in 2021, so it entered production a long time ago, and then we announce it, and then a few weeks later we launch the pre-order, and then we ship soon afterwards, trying to really closing that gap. And so if any of those steps aren't met, then we don't proceed with the next step, even if we were anticipating that we would. So even for projects like this, we're still trying to remain flexible and finding the right date, not saying this is the date and sticking to it no matter what. Cynthia has a nice comment. She says it was fun and informative. Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate that. Carlos says, what's the best logistics partner that you recommend nowadays? In your book, you recommend not to work with Amazon. What are your thoughts? Yeah, that's something that hasn't changed. I did Amazon multi-channel fulfillment for a few years. It's very efficient in some ways. Amazon has a very efficient fulfillment system, but it's incredibly impersonal. Like, it's nearly impossible to just email a person and say, hey, like I need your help with this. And even there are some instances with Amazon where, and this happened with us actually, we put the wrong SKU, the wrong barcode on a product, and Amazon couldn't do anything with that product. Even though we said, this is what it looks like, this is the product, we can tell you what it is, they can't ship it because they use robots and things to ship stuff like that. So whereas at a normal fulfillment center run by human beings, essentially, you can say, hey, I put the wrong SKU on this product. Can I either pay you to sticker over it, or can I just tell you to use your human eyes to identify that this product is not the same as this other one and to ship it? It might cost a little extra, but at least they can deal with it. I definitely would not recommend using Amazon. The companies that I work with now are in the US are Greater Than Games, in Canada, Hubtrotter, in the UK, Spiral Galaxy, and we use Aetherworks in Australia. Yeah. And let's see, Chad says, perhaps in your new version of this book, you could outline how you moved away from Kickstarter and became self-sustaining, the pros and cons of making that switch. Yeah, I'll definitely try to talk about that throughout the book club. I don't have plans to do a next edition of the book, but kind of these out loud discussions will be a version of a new edition of this book, but just out loud. All right, I think that's it for today. I'm gonna leave this video here. I can still see comments if you have stuff to add to it. I'm gonna also put it over on YouTube and on our website in case you have any thoughts afterward, including any feedback about this format itself, because I'm hoping this format can work for us for a while through the various chapters in this book. I will do another one of these probably in 2 weeks because I'm at a convention next week, probably in 2 weeks around the same time on a Thursday. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day, and thanks for your comments. I really did enjoy this. Take care. Bye.